Ting-Lu EX is the ultimate ability lock Pokemon, and with its Cursed Land ability turning off all abilities of Pokemon that aren't Pokemon EX if they have damage counters on them, and if Ting-Lu is in the active, this card could potentially be a card that we'll see a lot of in the upcoming World Championships in Yokohama. It also has a relatively strong attack in Land Scoop for 3 fighting energy. It deals 150 damage, which is not amazing, but it also puts 2 damage counters on one of our opponent's benched Pokemon. With no Manaphy in play, this could potentially turn off one of our opponent's support Pokemon, which will make our lives much easier. The biggest issue we have is powering up our Ting-Lu, and so we're going to use the box legendary Koraidon EX in order to try and do that. Dino Cry, the ability, allows us once during our turn to look into our discard pile and select 2 fighting energy that we find there, and attach them to our basic fighting Pokemon in any way that we like. This is a very strong ability. It of course does end our turn, but ultimately, as long as we have Ting-Lu in the active and some energy in the discard pile, we should be able to get attacking as early as turn 2. Squawkabilly EX is very important in this list to try and get some energy into the discard pile with its Squawk and Seize ability, but remember you can only use this card on turn 1, so any other time that you see it, it's essentially a dead card. And the list also plays a 1/1 line of Lucario V-STAR. You might ask, why is this V-STAR Pokemon in the deck? Ultimately, its Fighting Knuckle attack is quite strong, taking down Pokemon like Arceus V-STAR and other big bulky Vs, dealing 120 damage plus an extra 120 if your opponent's active Pokemon is a Pokemon V, and it also gives us a solid V-STAR power for 2 energy, a fighting and a colorless. We deal 70 damage times the amount of energy on our opponent's side of the field, so if our opponent has a big Gardevoir EX, for example, we can deal a ton of damage, take a knockout that otherwise we might not be able to. Ultimately, this deck list is very, very strong. It is, of course, Jose Marrero's list that he played at NAIC. If you want to play along with me, it's down in the description. Otherwise, let's jump into a game and see if we can't get a win with Ting-Lu EX. Time to test out Ting-Lu, and it's our turn to go first. Now, I don't think I've ever seen a worse hand than this. We've got Trekking Shoes. Judge is a good card, but I'm going to gamble on getting something better. We get a Lucario V, and we can attach an energy to that Lucario. And also, we could put the Bravery Charm on it if we want. I don't think we need to. We can just pass the turn there. We're in trouble. Maybe should have taken the Judge. It's okay though. It looks like we're up against Rapid Strike Inteleon VMAX, and this deck we know is very strong thanks to its stellar performance at NAIC, obviously taking down the entire tournament, doing a very, very good job there. We have drawn into some very interesting cards off of that Iono, which we're lucky to get access to, a Ting-Lu and 2 Gutsy Pickaxe, so theoretically there's a world where we attack next turn. It is, of course, purely hypothetical. If both the Gutsy Pickaxe hit, then we could potentially get an attack off. I'm not expecting it to happen. But this might be a good matchup in the sense that Inteleon VMAX is going to really want to have lots of Pokemon with abilities in play, and if we can turn those abilities off with Ting-Lu EX, I think we're in with a really solid chance of trying to win the game. This is very interesting here. I'm going to go for some Trekking Shoes. Let's go Gutsy Pickaxe first, actually. If we hit a Fighting Energy off the top deck here, we are in a good spot, but alas, 'twas not to be. That one's an energy though, so we can attach that from the top of the deck. Then we can go for the Switch Cart off the Trekking Shoes. I like that lots, actually, because here we could use Crushing Punch, I think, to attack into this Inteleon. It seems kind of weird, but I think this is actually the right direction to go here. Not because it's particularly strong, like it's not great, but it will discard that Rapid Strike energy, and we don't want our opponent to have access to those if we can afford to. We want our opponent to spend them with their Urshifu VMAX eventually. Plus, it puts a little bit of damage in play so that next turn, if I'm able to, I can retreat into Ting-Lu, attach an energy, and then use Painful Spoons to put some damage on the Remoraid on the bench, so that if it does evolve into Octillery, that ability will not be able to be used. So I'm relatively happy with this turn. It's obviously not ideal. We are way behind, but considering what may have happened, I think this is actually not too bad. So, our opponent going for a Professor's Research, a card that we would love to see there, and setting themselves up with an Octillery on the bench. They also have another Inteleon V. We want to turn that Octillery off with that Ting-Lu EX if we can get that to happen. I would really like that, because that would mean that our opponent's engine would be shut down, and if you've played against Rapid Strike Inteleon VMAX on the ladder, or if you've played it yourself, then you'll know how important Octillery is to this deck's engine. We also have a Koraidon off of the top deck here, so this is a very, very interesting situation. I am going to move that damage onto the Octillery here, because now not only can we retreat into our Ting-Lu, I think we actually can just power it up this turn as well. So let's play down Gapejaw Bog here after we've played down our Koraidon, then we can retreat into our Ting-Lu EX, and we can use Dino Cry with Koraidon to put 2 energy cards onto Ting-Lu EX in the active. Now our opponent cannot use that Octillery. They also won't be able to use the ability of the Inteleon VMAX if they evolve the active, so that's worth noting as well. But we are still in a very precarious position because, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but our hand is very small and it's a single energy. So our opponent knows we didn't do anything last turn when it comes to supporters. They're probably not going to gift us an Iono again. We're going to need to just draw out of this hand, I think. But next turn we can continue to move some damage around with Radiant Alakazam. We can land Scoop for the first time and start to put some real pressure on our opponent. Looks like they're going to fill their bench up with Lumineon, which again I'm pretty happy with, to be honest, because it means that they won't be able to do any tricky kind of Medicham V plays or things that might frustrate us or make life a little bit difficult. They're going to Lumineon for an Irida here and take some damage from that Gapejaw Bog. Irida will probably grab them, you would think, an Inteleon VMAX, potentially like an Escape Rope or something like that. Could be a card that they'd want to use to push the Ting-Lu EX to the bench. I don't actually know who I would promote if I do get Escape Roped, because none of these Pokemon are going to be able to retreat. It's a little bit sketchy. It's not ideal. We'll wait and see. Maybe it was worth using Dino Cry to put energy onto a Pokemon on the bench. Maybe the Lucario or the Koraidon to try and get out of a situation like that. Looks like they're going for an energy retrieval though. A mystery Pokemon, because obviously that's what we want the game to do. Inteleon VMAX coming down. One of the many features of Pokemon TCG Live, not showing me the card that he searched for. I'm assuming it was the Inteleon. And that Inteleon VMAX on the bench will be able to use its ability. And there's that Escape Rope, which I was not happy about. On the plus side, they might only have one. I could put the Radiant Alakazam in the active and hope they knock it out. I think I'm just going to go with the Lucario, though. I can tank a hit here. If they attack us for 140 damage, that's not a problem. If we don't get attacked, we can potentially set ourselves up to retreat. Maybe we just top deck a research or something next turn and we can get out of here. But, yeah, I'm not necessarily very happy about this at all. We'll wait and see. It's really hard because we have to wait for our opponent here, and our next turn could potentially be very, very quick. It looks like they're going to go for the Inteleon VMAX. Another card, by the way, that I'm a little concerned about in this deck is going to be Cheryl. If they Cheryl away all of the damage on their evolved Pokemon, it's going to be quite frustrating because they are going to be able to remove that damage and therefore remove the item lock, which Ting-Lu will be setting up. So hopefully Cheryl stays away, or hopefully they don't play Cheryl, and maybe we give ourselves a chance. No attack from our opponent, and there's Squawkabilly EX, only 4 turns too late. Going to attach to the active. We have no way to search out any Pokemon that will give us a supporter, so Ultra Ball is not a consideration here. I'm just going to move some damage. We're going to move 10 across to the Radiant Alakazam. That way, if we do top deck an energy, we can retreat to the Ting-Lu, and then we will be able to turn all of those abilities off. The Radiant Alakazam is actually a Pokemon that can't be healed with Cheryl, so they can never use that Radiant Alakazam with the Ting-Lu in the active. So I think I'm feeling relatively happy about that aspect of things. What I'm not happy about is how well our opponent is drawing here versus how poorly we are drawing. I'm really quite annoyed by that, to be honest. And here, I think we're going to see a Rapid Strike Urshifu coming into play. That G-Max Rapid Flow attack is very, very strong. They'll be able to search for the Rapid Strike energy with Octillery, but they will have to discard it. So that'll be the second Rapid Strike energy that's in the discard pile. and they probably will only take one prize this turn. Presumably, they'll knock out the Radiant Alakazam because it's got 120 HP left, and then they'll hit into the Ting-Lu as well, so that if I do attack with it at some point, it's halfway to being knocked out. So we'll see what they decide to do. There is the 120 on the Ting-Lu, and going on to the Koraidon as well. Okay, that's an interesting choice. Definitely not the choice that I would have made, but not necessarily wrong. And we're potentially drawing out of this bad hand here. We've got Trekking Shoes into Boss. I do not want Boss's orders. We can get rid of that. Ultra Ball is similarly bad. I think that this game is lost. We are in some real trouble now. I'm going to move some damage. We're going to move 10 damage off of that Inteleon VMAX onto the other. Doesn't really matter if the damage is on a Cheryl target, just because our Ting-Lu will turn them off next turn if we get into the active. That's the reason I've done that. A Cheryl would heal all that damage off anyway, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. We are seeing a Karina's Focus here, and again, we could potentially find ourselves in a position where this Urshifu is locked in the active. It's definitely not an easy position for them, and Rapid Strike decks are kind of clunky at this mid-stage, especially when you're not doing anything, right? Like, when your opponent is not doing anything for Rapid Strike, it can sometimes be kind of uncomfortable, because you need to be Iono'd and draw more cards that way as well. Like, you're kind of reliant on their assistance to help you draw cards, so definitely not an easy situation for our opponent, and again, just a pass. So we are looking pretty good. There is a professor's research as well, so hopefully we can find an energy here, and we do. So now we can retreat into our Ting-Lu EX on the bench if we want to. I'm going to Ultra Ball away a basic energy and a Battle VIP Pass. We didn't see any of those early. We would have really loved to have seen a Battle Pass, but alas, wasn't going to be. We could potentially use Dino Cry here onto another Ting-Lu, but I honestly want to just start attacking. I feel like we're in a pretty strong position, and to be honest, if they do take a knockout or two onto this Ting-Lu, maybe the Koraidon as well, we've got another Ting-Lu that can come in, and we've got an Iono in hand as well. So we're just going to land Scoop. We're going to put 150 damage on the active, and then move 20 damage onto a benched Pokemon. At this point, I don't know which the best target is. I've not played many games with Ting-Lu, so I don't know how the maths is going to work out, but I think putting extra damage onto Radiant Alakazam is always safe. It's not going to get healed off, so we don't need to worry about that. We can just keep it in play for later. Potentially take a knockout on the Radzam and take a prize at some stage. Also hitting into this Urshifu for 150, very strong. If we get a chance to attack one more time, I love the fact that I saw that Pokemon. Thank you, game. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that I know what Pokemon my opponent searched out. If we get to attack into this Urshifu one more time, then we will be able to Radzam over 2 turns and move damage onto the Urshifu. So I like that quite a bit. At the moment, though, I am a little bit concerned that my opponent is going to simply retreat into this Inteleon and attack, and that is less than ideal. If they retreat into the Inteleon and attack, they knock out the Ting-Lu. I have no energy on the field. We at least have a Ting-Lu that is in our hands. We could play that down, and then Iono. Maybe we find a switching card. We can get into the active that way. Maybe we find, I don't know. This is gonna be tricky. It's gonna be very tricky. We do need this Ting-Lu to be in the active immediately. Like, we need to lock down their abilities. I'm gonna promote the Koraidon. It gives us the best chance of retreating out of the active, and worst case scenario, we can just sacrifice it to our Inteleon overlords. We're gonna go for the Ting-Lu onto the bench, and then we're going to Iono our opponent. They'll draw 4 cards from the top of their deck after shuffling their hand to the bottom, and we have been given a pretty solid block of cards here. Let's go for the Gutsy Pickaxe, get a Penny, which is a pretty good card. I do like that. I'm going to retreat with Switch, or do I go with Escape Rope or Switch Cart? I think we go with Switch Cart here. I'm going to go into the Ting-Lu. I'm going to attach the Bravery Charm. And then I think I'm going to attach the basic energy to the Lucario just to give us some flexibility. I'm really likely to draw energy, so I think I'm just going to do that. But first we'll move some damage onto this Inteleon VMAX, just to make it just that little bit more difficult for our opponent to get around. And then I'm going to Dino Cry. Now, this is going to be a little slower, but it might be that we take a couple of turns of Dino Crying. Since our opponent doesn't have Octillery, it's unlikely that they're going to draw into the energy that they need. So I'm just going to take the gamble that that's the way that it works. We also have Penny, which means that we can remove the Koraidon from play and remove the damage from it. So that could be very useful as well. Next turn we can bench it again and then go for the Dino Cry from there. This may not be the correct play. I perhaps should have attached to the Ting-Lu, but if I go for the Koraidon here, not the Koraidon, sorry, if I go for the double play here, and then top deck an energy or top deck away to attack next turn, then I think that that is objectively better to have the flexibility. So, we'll just top deck the energy. We didn't do that. Okay, that's fair. Alright, fair enough. So I'm just going to go for the Penny. We'll get rid of that Koraidon. We don't want that Urshifu to be in play. And then, after rebenching it, and after dealing damage with Gapejaw Bog, we are simply going to Dino Cry. Now, both of our attackers are about ready to go. We can use Land Scoop. We can use Lucario VSTAR next turn if we want to. And we can potentially get an attack off with Koraidon EX as well. So, feeling pretty good. I don't like the fact that they've attached a Rapid Strike energy there. But I do like the fact that they've just attacked. They've done nothing else there. So, that's good. We can't get Gmax Spiraled again though, so maybe we need to think a little outside the box here. The frustrating part is I would have already hit into this Inteleon for 150 if I had actually done the right play, but that's okay, we're going to figure this out. We can find a way to win this one. Let's boss's orders. I think what we're going to do is we're going to boss the Lumineon. This seems like a weird play, but I think it's going to work out. I'm going to boss the Lumineon up, and then we are going to Painful Spoons. No, I don't think we need to. I think we can just Land Scoop here. I'm going to put 150 damage on the Lumineon. That won't knock it out, but we know our opponent cannot attack next turn unless they have a copy of Melanie. They've already played one, so it's not likely that they have another one, especially with only, 13 cards available. Next turn, we can move damage to the Lumineon if we want to take a knockout. That's more than acceptable. And then we can go for a Land Scoop into another Pokemon of our choice. Or, we can potentially move damage off of the Lumineon onto the Alakazam, and then start using Dino Cry to power up our Koraidon as a potential late-game attacker. Because if our opponent doesn't attach here, we know that they can't just attack again next turn. So, I'm feeling like there's a world where that happens, to be brutally honest. I'm feeling like there's a world where this Lumineon doesn't get knocked out next turn and just gets stranded in the active. We could also potentially go for an Escape Rope. They've passed. Okay, so we're gonna gamble. We are going to gamble. I don't think it's right to knock this Lumineon out, because if we knock the Lumineon out, we have no way to win the game in the upcoming turns. So I'm just going to move some damage away, and then we're going to set ourselves up with a Dino Cry. So we're going to get some damage on our Alakazam. We're going to get that much closer to a knockout, and then we're going to power up our Koraidon. And it's a bit unfortunate that our hand's filling up with Battle VIP Pass, because I would have much preferred to have seen those in the early game, but, you know, it doesn't always happen that way. We'll see what happens. We'll see how we go. An attachment there's not ideal. Okay, another Battle VIP Pass. Alright, sure thing. Let's Painful Spoons. We're going to move 20 damage from the active. We're going to put it on the Inteleon that has the energy on it. And then I think we probably just have to attack, right? We probably just have to take a knockout on the Lumineon and hope that it's enough. Let's pass. Let's hope that they don't have an energy. Like, I mean, it's a risk. It's a risk. We're here to take it. We're taking a risk. They had the energy. I should have just taken the prize. It was worth taking a risk. They might not have had it. Maybe the double turbo energy or the double rapid strike energy, was a bluff. You don't know. I didn't. I took the gamble. But the law won. Now, how do we go about this? Is there a world where we ever win this game? I'll tell you what. It's going to be a tricky world, but technically, there is still a world where we can win. I mean, there are prizes on our opponent's board. There's 150 damage on an Urshifu VMAX. We're very close to a knockout on a couple of other Pokemon floating around as well. Like, it's not impossible that it happens, right? Like, if we draw into an Iono right now, then anything can happen. So let's just draw into an Iono. Let's just draw a really good card. Ultra Ball's not a good card. That's not great. But it is another Ting-Lu. So maybe this is the play. Maybe it's as simple as using our escape rope, putting a Ting-Lu in the active and saying, can you deal with this? I mean, you obviously can. You've got the energy in your hand. But I mean, if we don't do it, then we're not doing anything. So we might as well do something. They promote the Inteleon. We're going to promote the Ting-Lu. We're going to turn all those abilities off. We're going to move some damage around. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is where it's going to get interesting. I'm going to put 2 more damage counters on this Radiant Alakazam. Because now that Radiant Alakazam is within range of being knocked out next turn. We could theoretically move 2 damage counters to it with our own Alakazam. We could potentially use the land scoop. Maybe we get to boss onto a Pokemon that isn't going to get knocked out. Maybe the Rapid Strike Urshifu could be the one. This is gonna be a loss. I think I've played this game quite poorly, but we can see how the deck would work, right? You turn all the abilities off, and you've got yourself a Judge is fine. We can play a Judge. Okay, maybe the game's not over yet. Maybe Judge is good to us. Maybe we get double Hawlucha. Maybe that knocks out the Alakazam. We got the energy as well. Okay, well, we are looking pretty good here. We're looking pretty gosh darn good. I mean, we need to assume that we are not going to get knocked out this turn, right? We have to assume that our opponent doesn't draw into the Rapid Strike energy to be able to knock out the Ting-Lu. Because if they do, we lose. But 4 in 14? Like, what's the chances? What are the chances? Are the chances good or bad? I'm not sure. Plus, we've got the Alakazam knocked out now. We can go for the Painful Spoons ability. Let's move some damage. We're going to move it off of the active, because we're going to put some damage there next turn. Or this turn, sorry. We take a prize. Is it a good prize? It's a research. So next turn we're doing something. Now we're going to land scoop. We're going to put 150 damage on the active. We're going to put 20 damage, I think, on the Lumineon V. Like, I think it's the only place that we can realistically put it. And wouldn't you know it, the world is suddenly aligned in such a way that if they don't attack us this turn, we can win. Which is ridiculous. Tower of Waters is not ideal. Iono is also not ideal. They're only drawing 2 cards though, and it means that they didn't have the energy. So we're looking for what, like a 2 in 12 chance? Do they have the Rapid Strike energy? They don't have a Rapid Strike energy. I think we win. Okay, so all we need to do now, Radiant Alakazam, we can Painful Spoons away any damage we want, chuck that onto the Lumineon V, and we are incredibly going to win this game. And I think the fact that we were able to win after retreating this Ting-Lu into a Koraidon EX and attacking with Wild Impact for 220, the fact that we were able to win is ridiculous. But what I would like you to do is I would like you to tell me all the things that you would have done differently down in the comments, because I do not think that went well at all. But otherwise, we got the victory screen, and that's all that matters. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching. I've certainly had a good time playing it. Maybe Ting-Lu's the play for Worlds. I probably should practice a little bit if that's the case. Anyway, I'll see you all next time for more from the Sableyes. Like, subscribe, etc. Goodbye.